and a very warm welcome. It's 9 PM IST and we are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. I am Molly Gambhir and you're watching Gravitas. Let's get started. Have terrorists renewed jihad against Russia? On Gravitas tonight, we tell you all about the second major attack in Russia in 3 months and why it has given rise to a series of serious questions. Here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. The US has drawn the red line on Hezbollah. It has issued a stern warning. What kind of warning? What is the objective? Will it work and dial down the Israel-Hezbollah tensions? Or is a wider war in the region now inevitable? We decode that and more in just a bit. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is free, but what does that mean for press freedom? We tell you all about the legal battle and where things stand now. We also tell you about the Indian wedding industry boom. This is a story you do not want to miss. All this and more coming up tonight on Gravitas. Have terrorists renewed jihad against Russia? Are jihadist groups trying to take advantage of the Ukraine war and strike? All signs do point to that, and that is our top story tonight. The attack that took place in Russia's southernmost republic of Dagestan on Sunday was the second major attack in Russia in 3 months. In 2 cities of Muslim-majority Dagestan, gunmen opened fire at synagogues, churches and the police. Today, the death toll from the attack has risen to 21. It includes mostly police officers and 1 Russian Orthodox priest. All signs pointing to the fact that it was a coordinated attack. And what does that tell us? It tells us that Russia's Islamist threat has metastised. In Dagestan, Russia says that the active phase of counter-terror operation has been completed. But the questions remain. Questions like who organized this attack? What was their motive? Nobody knows. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the Russian branch of Islamic State Khorasan, the Al-Azam media, posted a statement praising what it called brothers from the Caucasus for the attack. And what's more, according to Washington-based Institute for the Study of War, the Northern Caucasus branch of Islamic State likely conducted the shootings, plus the fact that Christian and Jewish places of worship were attacked, raised fears that Russia is facing renewed militant Islamist threat. Nobody would be surprised if it were Islamist extremism. After all, not long ago, Dagestan was a hotbed of extremism that had spilled over from neighboring Chechnya. The Dagestan attack also comes 3 months after gunmen stormed into Moscow's Crocus City Hall, killing nearly 150 people. The attack was claimed by the Islamic State. And just over a week ago, a bloody Islamic State-linked prison uprising took place in Rostov, southern Russia. The special forces shot dead 6 inmates who had taken hostages. According to experts who monitor the region, Islamic State and other jihadist groups had been discussing the opportunity that Russia's war in Ukraine presented for them. Experts, in fact, note how these jihadist groups have been writing articles about how Ukraine is the so-called black hole for the West and Russia. What does that mean? Well, it means that while the West and Russia are focusing their attention on the war in Ukraine, jihadists are looking to take advantage of this situation and strike. Now, coming back to Sunday's attack in Dagestan, just to be clear, no party or group has claimed responsibility. The Russian authorities have also not named any group. However, last October, when Hamas attacked Israel, triggering the war in Gaza, a strange riot broke out in Makhachkala International Airport in Dagestan. Somebody spread a rumor basically that Jewish settler refugees are coming to Makhachkala, and as a result, rioters shouting Allahu Akbar stormed the airport to catch Jewish passengers on a flight from Tel Aviv. The Russian cops were unable to do anything. Experts are sure that radical Islamism is again raising its head in Russia.
Islamic State, and especially the Khorasan branch, the one in Afghanistan and Pakistan, based there, in their magazines in English language and in Pashto language, but also recently in the Tajik language one, they have been writing articles, all articles, about how Ukraine is the so-called, as they call it, black hole for the West and Russia. Meaning that while the West and Russia is focusing their attention in Ukraine, jihadists can take advantage of this situation and strike.
Russia is facing Islamist terrorism, and it's very serious. But where exactly does it come from, and who is organizing this? The easiest answer seems to be the way the impoverished region of Dagestan is run. You see, Dagestan lies close to Chechnya, which has a history of violence. It also, by the way, has a majority Muslim region, where Moscow has fought 2 wars with separatists after the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union.
Знаем, что такое разрушение. Когда я первый раз брал в руки автомат, мне не было и 14.
The separatists were fighting for independence, but Russia described it as terrorism and responded with fury. It left much of the capital, Grozny, in ruins. Vladimir Putin then installed the feared warlord Ramzan Kadyrov in Chechnya. Kadyrov has since ruled Chechnya with an iron fist. Meanwhile, Dagestan, following the collapse of the USSR in 1991, declared itself a republic within the Russian Federation. It maintained its autonomous status, but did not want sovereignty for itself. And things came to a head in 1999, when the Islamic International Peacekeeping Brigade, which was a Chechen Islamist group, invaded Dagestan. Their aim basically was to create an independent Islamic state of Dagestan. Russia retaliated and eventually invaded neighboring Chechnya. In a 6-month-long military offensive, Islamist groups led an armed insurgency against Russia for about a decade until 2017. According to Human Rights Watch, Russia's brutal suppression and crackdown on Salafi Muslims saw civilians displaced and their property destroyed. Experts say that history is repeating itself, with the uptick in violence exposing the long simmering tensions in Russia. After Sunday's attacks, President Putin expressed his deep condolences, but the Kremlin has not commented on who was to blame or why authorities failed to stop them. When asked by a reporter, the Kremlin played down fears of any return to late 1990s and early 2000s. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia is different now. He said that the Russian society is absolutely consolidated. He said that such criminal terrorist manifestations are not supported by society, either in Russia itself or in Dagestan. But try as one might to deny it, the Kremlin appears to have taken its eye off the ball. Of course, no country is immune to terrorism. But just a few days ago, the Turkish government reportedly helped Russia disrupt a cell which intended to carry out another attack in Moscow. Clearly, something is up. Russia is facing jihad from a new generation of extremists, it seems. Of course, the Kremlin does not want to admit this, at least publicly, while it fights a war in Ukraine. The United States has drawn the red line on Hezbollah. It is a stern warning. America has basically warned Hezbollah to not assume that the US can stop Israel from attacking them. This is as per a Politico report. And the way things stand right now, the escalating Israel-Hezbollah tensions could spark a regional war. The US could be dragged into conflict with Iran. That is how dangerous the situation is. One spark could set the entire region on fire. The world cannot afford that. The US cannot afford that. So US officials who are trying to prevent a bigger war are sending out a strong message to Hezbollah, as per the Politico report. The message from the US is clear that they cannot be counted upon to stop an Israeli attack. What is this warning aimed at? To get Hezbollah to back down. But will that happen? That is the big question. And what if this warning does not really work? The question also is, how far will the United States really go? Will it draw that red line and stay away? Let me tell you more about America's messaging. As per the Politico report, the message is being conveyed indirectly. Remember, the US does not engage Hezbollah one-on-one. It relies on public communications or intermediaries. In fact, the report also quotes a Defense Department official as saying, I'm quoting, Israel's got to do what they got to do. But what will Israel do really? Serious efforts are being made to dial down the tensions. American officials also recently made their way to the region in order to attempt reining in the two sides. But is an escalation now inevitable? Let me tell you what the US chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Q. Brown, had earlier warned. He said that America would not be able to help Israel if it decides an all-out war against Hezbollah. This was a major setback to Netanyahu, of course. The top US military officer warned that any Israeli military offensive into Lebanon would risk an Iranian response in defense of the Hezbollah group, triggering a broader war that could put the US forces in the region in danger. He had said that Iran would be more inclined to support Hezbollah, adding that Tehran supports Hamas militants in Gaza, but would give greater backing to Hezbollah, particularly if they felt that Hezbollah was being significantly threatened. That's what he said. Also, there is the concern over what happens in case the tensions escalate further. As per the assessment by US officials, Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile batteries risk being overwhelmed in the opening strikes of any significantly escalated conflict with Hezbollah. So what happens next? Which way are things headed? Remember, Israeli officials have threatened a military offensive in Lebanon if there is no negotiated end to push Hezbollah away from the border. In fact, just days ago, Israel's military said it had approved and validated plans for an offensive in Lebanon, even as the US works to prevent the months of cross-border attacks from spiraling into a full-blown war. On Sunday, Netanyahu said that he hoped a diplomatic solution could be achieved, but also said that he would solve the problem in a different way if needed. He said, quote, "We can fight on several fronts and we are prepared to do that," unquote. So is that where things are headed? Is a wider war inevitable? Like we said, one spark is all that it would take to trigger a catastrophe. It has been a long road to freedom for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, and when I say long, this is what I mean: 14 years of legal battle and 5 years of jail time. But Assange's return to Australia comes with a set of conditions. The saga also triggered and stirred the age-old conversation around press freedom. We will get to that in just a bit, but let's first tell you where things stand right now for Assange. Earlier today, Julian Assange walked out of a maximum security prison in Belmarsh, UK. The Australian editor has struck a plea deal with the United States. America, remember, has been trying to extradite and try him under the US Espionage Act. Assange is now scheduled to appear for a hearing on Wednesday, not in mainland US, but at the Northern Mariana Islands, which is a US overseas territory. The 52-year-old will plead guilty on just one count under America's Espionage Act, as compared to a list of 18 counts he was charged with earlier. Now, Assange has to plead guilty on grounds of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified US national defense documents. Who is Julian Assange? What's his story? What is the WikiLeaks saga all about? Let me break it all down for you quickly, along with a closer look at his legal battle with several Western governments, especially the United States. In 2006, Julian Assange set up a website called WikiLeaks. What was the objective? To give a platform to whistleblowers to leak secret information and classified government documents. In the website's own words, quoting, WikiLeaks published groundbreaking stories of government corruption and human rights abuses, holding the powerful accountable for their actions, quote unquote. Let's now take a look at a timeline of the key events in this saga. In April 2010, WikiLeaks released a leaked video from Iraq. It showed a US helicopter carrying out an airstrike in Baghdad that killed several civilians, including 2 Reuters journalists. And then 3 months later, in July, the website published hundreds of thousands of leaked US military documents about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In October 2010, WikiLeaks released 400,000 classified military files chronicling the Iraq War. This was one of the largest security breaches the US military had seen. Washington was still trying to do damage control when in November, WikiLeaks released thousands of cables from US embassies from all over the world. These included candid views of foreign leaders and blunt assessments of security threats. On the 18th of November 2010, a Swedish court ordered Assange's arrest on allegations of sex crimes, accusations that Assange has repeatedly denied, and said that it is a means for getting him extradited to the United States. It is important to note here that operations of WikiLeaks were routed through a network of servers in Iceland and Sweden. In February 2011, London's Westminster Magistrates Court ordered Assange's extradition to Sweden, which he had appealed. And when the appeal failed, he took refuge in Ecuador's embassy in London and sought political asylum. Assange then remained there until the 11th of April 2019, when Ecuador revoked his political asylum and he was arrested. From February 2020, a long legal battle started over Assange's extradition to the United States. While in 2021, a UK court ruled against his extradition, the relief was short-lived for Assange. In 2022, a judge approved his extradition to the US, which Assange fought tooth and nail to overturn. Assange's freedom has triggered a wave of mixed reactions. World leaders and journalists are celebrating his victory. For thousands of press freedom advocates, whistleblowers, some citizens as well, Assange is a hero. He has received global praise and support for putting the spotlight on US war crimes during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. But you see, many are concerned about the guilty tag that Assange carries for life. The plea deal with the US also brings the focus back to the country's World War I era Espionage Act, a law that critics say has been used and abused time and again to clamp down on dissent.
The use of these really punitive laws to which there is no defense will have had the effect of silencing all kinds of journalists from doing this kind of journalism.
American civil liberty advocates have called the Espionage Act unfair and unconstitutional. Rights groups, in fact, have also questioned its blanket use with no exception to whistleblowers. How else is a person supposed to expose any wrongdoing by a powerful organization or individual? But the Julian Assange saga also raises a question over media accountability and the impact of such massive leaks on a country's national security. It also raises concern over global diplomatic stability and the need to maintain secrecy. Also, the fact that the US Justice Department was willing to reach a plea deal with Assange after all these years is a statement in itself. For now, while the story of Assange has been dominating headlines, these questions and serious concerns hang in the air. Questions that have been around for years and have been brought back into the focus because of all that has transpired over the last few hours. Let's now shift our focus to Pakistan, where religious scholars have declared a human milk bank as un-Islamic. You heard that right. Basically, an initiative meant to promote infant health and nutrition is now under threat in Pakistan because it offends a section of the society. Here's what you need to know. Earlier this month, the first human milk bank was established in Pakistan at the Sindh Institute of Child Health and Neonatology in Karachi. Developed in partnership with UNICEF and the Pakistan Pediatric Association, the facility opened its door to provide donor milk to infants who cannot receive sufficient breast milk from their mothers. Now, the initiative represents a major step forward in promoting infant health and nutrition, especially as low breastfeeding rates have led to stunted growth crisis in Pakistan. The Human Milk Bank in Karachi was established to take on these challenges. A dedicated facility to collect, pasteurize, store and distribute human breast milk donated by lactating mothers. Alas, religious fanatics in Pakistan do not agree. In fact, on Saturday, the Human Milk Bank temporarily suspended operations following criticism. The launch of the Human Milk Bank sparked a heated debate on social media. While supporters stressed on the bank's importance for infant health, religious scholars said it goes against Islamic law regarding breastfeeding. They declared the milk bank haram, which means forbidden under Islamic law. Mufti Muhammad Taqi Usmani, a Karachi-based retired federal Shariat court judge and leading Islamic scholar, issued a fatwa declaring the establishment of the Human Milk Bank illegal. In a statement, Sindh Institute cited religious decrees from prominent scholars as the reason for the suspension. They stated their commitment to respecting religious and cultural sensitivities, but they also emphasized on the critical need for the milk bank, explaining how breastfeeding is vital to save the lives of these vulnerable children. The matter has been referred to the Council of Islamic Ideology for further guidance. But why would the scholars issue a fatwa against a milk bank? Why would they deny infants nutrition? Well, they argue that in Islam, a woman who breastfeeds a child not biologically related to her develops ties of milk kinship called rada with that child. And so a milk bank, they say, goes against the Islamic law regarding breastfeeding. But Pakistan is not the only Islamic country facing this challenge. In fact, in 2019, a newly opened human milk bank in Bangladesh was shut down after similar protests from religious scholars. Religious scholars argue that this concept of milk kinship shows the cultural divergence between Islamic and Western perspectives on familial relationship. While milk banks have existed around the world, the concept of Rada has impeded the adoption of milk banks in the Muslim world. Do you know Iran is one of the only Muslim countries in the world that has an active human milk bank? It was established in 2016 at the Al-Zahra Teaching Hospital in Tabriz. Going back to the situation in Pakistan, what does the fatwa against the milk bank really tell you? Because to us, this looks like yet another example of how fanatics in Pakistan just will not let the country develop. Already the situation is dire in the country. It is resource constrained, food insecure. As per UNICEF, nearly 10 million Pakistani children suffer from stunting. But we don't expect the fanatics to know or care about all that. After all, they have their own agendas to fulfill. But in pursuing their own agendas, did they even bother to consider what will happen to the infants at risk of stunting? How will premature babies receive their nutrition? Or does their interpretation of Islamic law override the lives of children and the future of the country?
Thank you so much for paying attention. Thank you for being with us. And Butch and I are, again, so honored to be part of this crew.
Earlier this year, there was a lot of curiosity over the launch of Boeing's astronaut-carrying craft Starliner. It was delayed by years, and there have been multiple launch cancellations owing to technical issues. Now, Starliner has spent 20 days in space. In fact, it has overstayed by more than 10 days. But the big question is, when will Starliner return to Earth with its 2 astronauts? And can Starliner return safely? In this report, we'll tell you all about the Starliner Saga. Take a look.
American aerospace giant Boeing is facing its worst yet crisis. In recent years, Boeing's fleet of 737 MAX series planes have been hit by safety issues, with 2 fatal crashes and parts falling off mid-flight. Flying on Boeing 737 planes has become fearsome. On many occasions, Boeing 737 aircraft passengers experience sudden severe discomfort, including stinging sensation in the ears and nosebleeds. All these are attributed to Boeing's compromises in manufacturing and safety standards. Amid such testing times, Boeing test-launched its new spacecraft Starliner. Starliner is Boeing's astronaut ferry. It's meant to carry NASA crew to the International Space Station and return them safely. 2 veteran American astronauts and former US Navy test pilots, Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, have undertaken this journey. But so far, things haven't been going smoothly. NASA and Boeing approved Starliner's maiden launch, knowing fully well that there was a helium gas leak. On June 5th, Starliner, nestled atop the Atlas V rocket, lifted off and headed towards space. While traveling in space, Starliner developed more helium leaks. Soon after, Starliner could not fire 5 of its 28 thrusters, which steer the craft in space. Despite this, Starliner safely reached the space station with an hour's delay. Astronauts Wilmore and Williams have spent more than 20 days on the space station. They were supposed to return within a week or so. And here we are on the 25th of June, and their return has been delayed indefinitely. The delay is caused by ongoing issues with the Starliner craft. Astronauts routinely live and work on the space station for as long as 6 months. But the issue here is about the repeated delays and Boeing's reputation that's hit rock bottom. And most importantly, Starliner is only rated for a 45-day mission. This means they must return before the 3rd week of July. Boeing and NASA have been confident. They maintain that the delays are helping them study the Starliner craft, its data, and the associated technical issues. However, if the need arises and if at all Starliner is deemed unfit to return to Earth, what are the alternatives? It would be Boeing's worst nightmare. Boeing would have to depend on Elon Musk's SpaceX. SpaceX has been operating their own astronaut ferry crew, Dragon. Over the last 4 years, Dragon has ferried astronauts to and from the space station in multiple trips. And if all options fail, Boeing will have to seek their competitor SpaceX's help to return the astronauts safely. Here's the irony of the situation. NASA had chosen both Boeing and SpaceX to design and build astronaut ferries. SpaceX took the lead and mastered this technology. Boeing delayed Starliner for many years, spent much more than the projected budget, and even now don't have a reliable solution. By all means, it appears that Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore will get back home only by July. With Siddharth MP, Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Shifting focus to Kenya now, as the parliament there has approved the contentious finance bill that pushes up taxes. Police and protesters are clashing on the streets of the capital, Nairobi, and other parts as well. At least 5 protesters have been killed, dozens injured, as police opened fire on demonstrators trying to storm Kenya's legislature. Former US President Obama's half-sister was also tear-gassed on live television. Let's get you all the details. What started out as a peaceful demonstration turned ugly by the afternoon as crowds of protesters started throwing stones at the police and pushed back against barricades, making their way towards the Parliament complex, which was sealed off by the police in full riot gear. This resulted in massive clashes between the police and hundreds of protesters. As protesters set sections of Kenya's parliament ablaze after the bill was passed, this is what the situation looked like. Police resorted to opening fire on the protesters, resulting in several casualties.
I don't want him as my president. I even regret why I voted him. Yes, he must go. This Nini finance bill, we are not amending. We are rejecting.
We destroy
everything. We withdraw it. The money that he uses to travel, ajipange, ametuharibia economy. He must go. Ruto, you must by force.
We are tired of you.
Pleasing you. We are not pleasing you. You must go by force.
And as tensions escalated, anti-tax protesters set Nairobi City Hall on fire. Take a look. Even the half-sister of former United States President Barack Obama was not spared by the police crackdown in Nairobi. Omar Obama was tear-gassed by the police during an interview with CNN Live on air while protesting Kenya's controversial finance bill. Across the country, protesters vented their ire over the government's tax push. After Nairobi, protests spread to other parts and President Ruto's hometown in Rift Valley in Eldoret as well. Let's take a look at the key provisions in the finance bill. that have sparked anger. The government drew ire of the public after it planned to introduce a sales tax of 16% on bread and 25% duty on cooking oil. There was also a planned increase in the tax on financial transactions and 2.5% tax on vehicle ownership. These were dropped amid public outcry. The other charge was the eco-levy, a charge on products that contribute to e-waste and harm the environment. The taxes that were untouched by the government included tax on specialized hospitals and higher import fees. With the Kenyan Parliament approving the finance bill, moving it through to a third reading by lawmakers, the next step is for the legislation to be sent to the President for his signature. President Ruto can then send it back to the Parliament if he has any objections. Let's now shift focus. Is the Nvidia bubble bursting? The AI chip giant Nvidia has rapidly lost about $500 billion of its market capitalization after it became the world's most valuable company last week. Nvidia's share slid 13% in 3 days amid concerns that the company may have become overvalued. But is that really the case? Is the Nvidia stock in a bubble, or is its stock just in a correction? Let's break it all down for you. The 6.7% decline was the largest one-day percentage drop since April and the third consecutive negative session for the stock. Based on Bloomberg, Nvidia lost about $430 billion in market value in just 3 days. That's the largest 3-day value fall for any company in history. Shares fell 13% over the period, past the 10% threshold that represents a correction. In fact, the drop weighed on chip makers, with the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index falling 3% on Monday. The drop put Nvidia's valuation back below the $3 trillion threshold and under both Microsoft and Apple in size. Nvidia briefly claimed the title of the world's largest stock last week. Even with the slump, Nvidia remains up nearly 140% this year, and this makes the stock the second best performer among S&P 500 index components, behind Supermicro. That's another favorite AI play. If you are an Indian, you are well aware of how long and elaborate the wedding celebrations can be in the country. And even those of our non-Indian viewers, some of them might agree. To get married, Indian style, could be nothing short of a gala that spans several days. And there is a reason why they are referred to as the big fat Indian weddings. And why are we suddenly talking about wedding celebrations in India? Well, the tradition, pomp and fervor as far as Indian weddings are concerned contributes massively to the country's economy. A report by an investment firm has pegged India's wedding economy to be the second largest industry of the country. You heard that right. As per the report, the wedding industry in India is worth over $130 billion. It's only second to the food and grocery industry in the world's 5th largest economy by GDP. For a country as large and diverse as India, the scale is unimaginable. But let me further quantify it for you. India's wedding market is twice the size of the US industry. The average money that Indians spend on wedding festivities is over $15,000. This when the per capita GDP is less than $3,000. And that makes wedding expenses worth over 5 times. And that's not all. Most Indian couples spend twice as much money on their wedding as compared to their own education. The report does not end there. It goes on to talk about the number of other industries that Indian weddings impact. We're talking about the ethnic clothing, jewelry market. In India's jewelry market, more than 10% of the revenues are from bridal jewelry. And there is more on the list. Hotels, the food catering industry, travel, professional services like hair and makeup for the bride and an entire wedding party. Even the event management market has grown significantly over the years as Indian weddings become more elaborate. And when it comes to the rich, Indians or foreigners, let's not forget destination weddings. Several tourism hotspots in India, especially places like Udaipur in Rajasthan, also Goa, among others, have been popular destinations for these weddings. Many top celebrities have also spent millions on their wedding celebrations in the country. The Indian government has also taken note of how important the country's wedding industry really is, how far-reaching its contribution is to other sub-industries that further generate business as well as employment. Just last year, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Wed in India campaign, a call urging people to explore Indian destinations over foreign locations. Moving on for now, Afghanistan's incredible journey to the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup is melting hearts all over the world. And it's not just cricket fans who have been blown away. It's a rare moment of celebration for a country ravaged by conflict over the last few decades. Our next report getting you the latest. Take a look.
Afghanistan have done it! They've done it!
These are tears of joy.
Wow. Afghanistan have done it.
And the realization of a dream against all odds.
And it's into the semi-final.
The pristine Caribbean islands are witnessing